Pursuant to Internal Revenue Service guidance, be advised that any federal tax advice contained in this program is not intended to be used, and it cannot be used by any person or entity for the purpose of avoiding any tax penalties that may be imposed by the Internal Revenue Service or any other U.S. federal taxing authority or agency, or promoting, marketing, or recommending to another party any transaction or matter addressed in this show. The opinions expressed by the host and the guests are their own and may not be used as authoritative advice. Any use of this material without the written consent of the host is strictly prohibited.
Welcome back. I am your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy, and this is the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560, The Answer. More about that killer storm later.
I know I hate that. And now we're going to go into something like foreclosure. I mean, you know, bubonic plague and foreclosure. It has nothing to do with each other. We're sorry to bring you down, but here we go, Steve.
Well, that's big news, Jim.
You write a blog. Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, you know, who could have financial trouble when you got Ebola and it's eating away your skin or whatever it does to you? Steve.
I think it kills you.
Yeah. You have a blog, don't you?
I do. It's at ChicagoTaxTeam.com.
And this week's subject of the blog is?
We're doing foreclosure litigation. So the last couple of weeks we've been talking about foreclosures here in Illinois. First, I think we talked about how foreclosure in general works. And then we talked about how the law here in Illinois, how it works here. And so this week we're going to talk about one of the remedies, which is litigation. So you go in and you litigate it. And what this is just like every other lawsuit. So if someone sues me for a breach of contract, or someone sues me because they got hurt or something, the foreclosure case is just like that. They file a complaint, as we talked about last week. They file a complaint with the court, and then what litigators do is they start attacking the complaint. So you start at the beginning. Then you say, hey, that's not the proper party. This is what they call standing. So with these mortgages, they've been bought and sold so many times that almost always the defendant, the homeowner, doesn't even recognize who the plaintiff is. They don't know. It's usually Deutsche Bank, Trust XYZ 123, and they go, "Who's this guy? What is this about?" Because mortgages in America have become so complicated. So it used to be you'd go to your bank and they'd look you up and down, and they'd look at all your finances, and then they'd loan you money,
and then they'd say no.
That's right. Or they'd loan you money, and then every month you would pay back that bank, and then at the end they would give you you'd be finished. And remember, Archie Bunker had the mortgage, the mortgage burning because he was finished. Okay, but what happens now is we have loan originators, so they originate the loan, and then as soon as you get your house, they sell it to somebody else, and then somebody else buys it. And then what often happens is they sell them, a whole bunch of them together. They put them in a bundle, and then they put them in a trust account. And that's why these trusts are created. And then the trust account then hires servicing companies, and a servicing company is a lot like a property manager. And where they don't own the property, so they don't own the mortgage. They just service it. So if you have a complaint, you call them. They collect the money. That's the same thing with the servicer. So you might think you're paying Bank of America, but they might not own it. They might just be a servicer. And so we got to talk to the owners of the mortgage before we can do a loan modification. And that's something we'll talk about next week or the week after. We're going to talk about loan modifications.
So come back for that, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, loan modifications are important because this is how a lot of people are saving their homes since 2008. One of the reasons why are because litigation has revealed that a lot of these mortgages were not following all the rules. And we hear about robo-signing and all of this. Mm-hmm. And this happened because somebody who was in foreclosure spent a lot of money to do a litigation, because litigation can be very expensive. So you start doing a lot of motions. So a motion to dismiss because you don't think that the complaint follows the rules. And remember, this is the Illinois Mortgage Foreclosure Law. It requires a certain amount of information has to be in the complaint. And if that information isn't found in the complaint, then it can be dismissed because it's not following. It's just a legal technicality. So a lot of this is legal technicalities. And when you're getting a mortgage, there's lots of regulations. So what a surprise, right? Everything we do, there's so much regulation. So there's a Truth in Lending Act, which requires certain disclosures when you're going to buy any kind of any kind of consumer loan has to have a lot of conspicuous terms there so the consumer can understand it very clearly. So they have to tell you exactly what the interest rate is, and then they tell you how much you're going to pay at the end. So that's why you see I might be borrowing $200,000, but I'm paying back $400,000, right? And this is all because the Truth in Lending Act requires this. And sometimes in a lot of these loans, they didn't follow the Truth in Lending Act. And so there's remedy, and one of the remedies for the Truth in Lending Act is rescission. And a rescission means I can just cancel the agreement, and they have to give me all the interest that I've paid. They have to give it back to me, and then they cancel the loan. But, what happens if
Do they take the house then?
Well, you have to give them back the money that they have left, and if I'm underwater, I won't be able to get the money to rescind the loan. So it's a remedy that really doesn't have a very good remedy for me. So so it's not really functional. And a lot of this, I think, is these technical litigation techniques, and there's a lot of lawyers out there that this is what they do a lot of, they call it forensic analysis. So they look at everything to find these errors, and then they bring motion after motion after motion after motion in court. And if you're the homeowner, you're paying for the motion after motion after motion.
Because they have deep pockets, and they're hoping that you just
not everybody has deep pockets,
right?
I
meant the banks.
That's right. And so they have lawyers working on their side. And so if you want to litigate it, they'll litigate it with you. They have the money. And if you want to have the money and pay it for it, you could do that. In my opinion, it's not always the best way to go. There's other ways to buy. Usually what they're doing is they're just trying to buy enough time because they're trying to do something else, like a loan modification. Uh-huh. But if you don't get involved in the foreclosure case in the litigation, you won't have time to get a loan modification, because loan modifications can take a long time, 6 months, 9 months, longer to get a loan modification. I think that's by design, right? They don't want, you don't just call them and say, hey, I'd like a loan modification. They say, yeah, well, okay, next week you start paying your mortgage again. That's not the way it works. And because that's not the way it works, a lot of times people who are trying to get a loan modification who don't really understand the way this all works get themselves caught and kind of limit their options. And I think that's why early in the process, get some help, get somebody to help. And you can always call me. I'd be happy to help you.
Unless you have Ebola.
But yes, unless you have Ebola, that's correct. But if you don't hire me, find somebody, get some help. Don't sit back and rely on the mortgage company to help you. They're the adversary. They're suing you. They're trying to take your house from you. So don't trust them to help you save your home. Okay, and that's a very big thing to do, I think. But there's other ways, I think, in litigation to try to buy you the time you need. One of the things is what they call discovery. And discovery is when you're asking the mortgage company to come up with proof. Show me the documents. And because these loans have been bought and sold and moved around for so many times, sometimes, most of the time, the mortgage companies have a very hard time finding the documents.
The original contracts?
Well, the original, or anything, the transfers, when they transfer it or assign it to somebody else, these all have documents. And every time it goes to somebody else, they have to be another assignment. So there's more affidavits. And this is what they
Why is that because they're bundled and that they sell
This is why they were robo-signing, because they couldn't find the real documents. So they were fabricating them. And redoing
so that's
them.
what that meant when the guy said they went.
And then the robo-sign is because they said, well, how many of these do you do a day? Someone had paid a lot of money, flew this guy in from California, and they asked him, well, how many do you do a day? And he came up with some outrageous number. And they said, well, that's like one every 2 seconds. How do you do that? You can't sign affidavits that you looked at all of this. Oh, we have a machine that signs it for me. This is the robo-signing. Okay, this is how this all came to light. And because of the robo-signing, that's why we have all of this loan modifications now, because this was a settlement.
These were brought in by the courts.
These were settlements where actually the attorney generals of many of the states sued these Bank of America and all the Chase Bank and all of these other large institutions. And as a settlement, they said, okay, we'll do some loan modifications. Now, those settlements are coming to an end, and that's why I think loan modifications might be going away, at least as many as there. So if you're having problems with the foreclosure, if you're behind in your mortgage, call someone. You can call me. I'm at 312-664-6649. And again, there's lots of options. You need to sit down and talk about them. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about more options. So this is one option: litigate. And there's, again, next week we'll talk about more options on how to protect you.
Well, the next part of the show is going to come. This is the part everybody's usually waiting for.
I think you're waiting for it.
Well, that's because I can talk in that one. So don't go anywhere. Come on back, and we're going to get into the best part of the show.